My God, is he better than I am? Is there someone who can beat me in the sky? We battled. No lasting advantage. He was brighter, I was smarter. He was faster, and I was quicker.
Hello to all the classic people that are returning. I'm glad you're back. I want to welcome any new visitors. As a technical note, references and citations are listed for each show on the site at classicmovierev.com. Today on the Classic Movie Rev, we are taking on The Great Waldo Pepper, 1975. This movie was requested by David from Georgia. Keep on contacting me because I'd love to hear from y'all. Before we get going, I want to remind you to follow the links in the show notes or from the site to visit our store. We have some great tees and other merchandise. I have to take care of a couple of terms before we get into this movie to make sure we're all starting from the same place. The first of these terms is barnstorming. Traveling theater groups would travel from town to town performing their acts in rented or borrowed barns. Following World War I, 1914 to 1918, the U.S. government sold off excess warplanes at a discounted price. Ex-military pilots or even people with no flying experience could buy these planes. Combining the surplus of planes, lack of jobs, and men adjusting to peacetime, individuals and groups of men would travel the country performing aerial shows. They would fly low over a town to attract attention and then land in a field where they could charge for flights or for doing stunts. The second term is flying circus. At the beginning of World War I, Baron Manfred von Richthofen transferred from the cavalry to aviation. The attack squadrons he flew with were labeled flying circuses for one of two reasons. The first is that they were moved from place to place on the battle line depending on needs. They were often moved by train like a regular circus. The other and more plausible reason is that von Richthofen painted his combat airplane solid red. This brightly painted plane, along with the fact that he was heading towards 80 aerial victories, earned him the nickname the Red Baron. Other members of the unit soon followed and painted their planes in various colors. Richthofen was the leading ace in World War I, even though he died before the war ended at the age of 25. The manner of his death will be discussed more in the summary. America's top ace, Eddie Rickenbacker, had 26 victories. Jumping into the movie, IMDb.com rates this movie a pretty low 6.7. It is low on Rotten Tomatoes, with 67% on the tomato meter and only 57% audience approval. This movie is better than that, even if you just took the dialogue out and showed the flying. Perhaps director George Roy Hill tried to showcase the entire era, making the movie a little long. Great film critic Roger Ebert gave the movie 3 stars in a January 1st, 1975 review. He stated, quote, "The Great Waldo Pepper is a film of charm and excitement, a sort of bittersweet farewell to a time when a man with his airplane could make a living taking the citizens of Nebraska on their first 5-minute flights. It doesn't have any big notions about the passing of that era or of the barnstormers, who are seen as overgrown kids with wonderful toys that fly. But it has a good feeling for the period, and director George Roy Hill gave us poignancy and adventure." Unquote. New York Times film critic Vincent Canby stated on March 14, 1975, quote, "The Great Waldo Pepper is a most appealing movie. Its moods don't quite mesh, and its aerial sequences are so vivid, sometimes literally breathtaking, that they upstage the human drama, but the total effect is healthily romantic. It's the kind of movie that enriches dreams, even though its story seems sort of strung out, like a first draft, and includes moments that slip into bathos." Unquote. Actors.
Right, and I'm a Shakespearean actor.
Handsome leading man Robert Redford played the title role of Flyer Waldo Pepper. Redford was first covered in the Cannes film The Sting, 1973. Bo Swenson played Axel Olsen, Waldo's friend and aerial partner. Svensson was 6 foot 5 inches tall. He was the U.S. Armed Forces Far East Judo champion in 1961, and his middle name is Ragnar. Svensson was born in Sweden in 1941. Svensson moved to America as a teenager and served in the U.S. Marine Corps from 1959 to 65. He began taking television roles in 1965 following his discharge. Svensson worked on a PhD in metaphysics at UCLA from 1970 to 74. At some point, he earned a black belt in judo and in karate. He was still acting in plays and television while in school. Eventually acting won out, and he was cast in television shows like Here Come the Brides 1968 to 69, McCloud 1971, and Ironside 1969 to 72. His first big films were Maurice 1973 and The Great Waldo Pepper 1975. Svensson replaced Joe Don Baker as Buford Pusser and made Walking Tall 2 1975 and Final Chapter Walking Tall 1977. Svensson obtained other film and television roles like The Inglourious Basterds 1978, North Dallas 40 1979, the television show Walking Tall 1981, The Delta Force 1986, and Heartbreak Ridge 1986, where I believe he played Big Swede. Svensson played Ivan on Season 3, Episode 1, Did You See the Sun Rise on television's Magnum P.I. 1982. I have to say this could be the greatest Magnum episode ever. Svensson had a small role in Kill Bill, Volume 2, 2004, and he was in Inglourious Basterds 2009 because Tarantino received inspiration from Svensson's earlier The Inglourious Basterds 1978. Susan Sarandon had a fairly small but important role as Mary Beth. Sarandon was born in 1946 in New York City.
I'm walking here! I'm walking here!
She graduated from Edison High School in New Jersey. Sarandon attended Catholic University of America 1964 to 68, where she met and married future actor Chris Sarandon, Prince Humperdinck. She worked as a model for the auto industry. Sarandon went to a cattle call and was cast in Joe 1970. This movie was followed by mostly television work until 1975. In 1975, The Great Waldo Pepper and the role she is very often associated with, The Rocky Horror Picture Show 1975, were released. She kept busy with films like The Other Side of Midnight 1977, Atlantic City 1980, Tempest 1982, and The Hunger 1983. Other great movies include The Witches of Eastwick 1987, Bull Durham 1988, Thelma and Louise 1991, Lorenzo's Oil 1992, White Palace 1990, The Client 1994, Dead Men Walking 1995, for which she won an Oscar for Best Actress, and Stepmom 1998. She is still very active in acting and politics. Edward Herrmann played plane designer and friend of Waldo, Ezra Stiles. This guy was 6'5" also. Herrmann was born in D.C. in 1943. He grew up near Detroit and studied acting in London. Herrmann worked extensively on the stage before his first film, the law school movie The Paper Chase 1973. Herrmann was in Robert Redford's two great movies, The Great Gatsby 1974 and The Great Waldo Pepper 1975. Herrmann was in many great movies including Reds 1981, Annie 1982, Sun's Coming Out Tomorrow, Purple Rose of Cairo 1985, Overboard 1987, and The Lost Boys 1987, which is an excellent modern vampire movie. In the next decades, his films included Richie Rich 1994, Nixon 1995, Intolerable Cruelty 2003, and The Aviator 2004. Herrmann died in 2014. Jeffrey Lewis played the role of Aviation Inspector Newt. Lewis was born in New Jersey in 1935. He moved to California at the age of 10 and was interested in acting while in high school. After high school, Lewis toured with the Plymouth Theater in Massachusetts. He also acted in the New York Theater and studied at the Neighborhood Playhouse. Lewis had an uncredited film role in 1963. Following this, he worked extensively on television. Lewis's first larger film role was in The Culpeper Cattle Company 1972. Lewis was in Dillinger 1973. He became associated with Clint Eastwood and was in High Plains Drifter 1973. His friendship led to his casting in those Ape films and others like Every Which Way But Loose 1978, Any Way You Can 1980, Bronco Billy 1980, and Pink Cadillac 1989. Lewis wasn't limited as he had many significant film roles. These roles include Macon County Line 1974, Thunderbolt and Lightfoot 1974, The Great Waldo Pepper 1975, The Wind in the Line 1975, where he played a warlike diplomat, The Return of a Man Called Horse 1976, the inferior sequel to A Man Called Horse 1970, Heaven's Gate 1980, Night of the Comet 1984, where he was an excellent evil scientist, Fletch Lives 1989, The Lawnmower Man 1992, Double Impact 1991, a Jean-Claude Van Damme karate flick, Only the Strong 1993, where the capoeira style of karate was highlighted, and Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil 1997. Lewis was the father of natural-born killer Juliette Lewis. Lewis died in 2015. Bo Brunden played the German ace Ernst Kessler, who is loosely based on Ernst Udet. Brunden was born in 1937 in Sweden. That's the second person on this film that was born in Sweden. Brunden is known for a couple of good movies such as The Great Waldo Pepper 1975 and Meteor 1979. However, he's had roles on many of the great television shows of the 70s and 80s, including Wonder Woman 1975, the one with Linda Carter, although Gal Gadot is pretty good, The Bionic Woman 1976, Tales of the Gold Monkey 1982, look it up if you don't know it, The A-Team 1986, and Dallas 1989. His performance in this movie was subtle and understated and was about as perfect as can be. Story.
Let me explain. No, there is too much. Let me sum up.
The movie begins with a montage of pilots, barnstorming, movie stunts, and dogfights, many of the events turning out badly. An airplane engine is heard, and the screen shows that it was Nebraska in 1926. 1926 was a time when people looked up at the sound of an airplane. A small boy and his dog run to the field where the plane is landing. A yellow standard J-1 two-seater trainer lands. There were about 1,600 of these planes produced from 1916 to 18. The Great Waldo Pepper is painted on the side of the aircraft. Waldo Pepper, Robert Redford, gives the ever-growing crowd a spiel on the joys of flying for only $5 each. He asks who wants a free ride, and the small boy comes forward. The boy will bring him gas all day long in exchange for a ride at the end of the day. Waldo gives rides as the small boy hauls gas. Era music provides the scene with a sense of nostalgia. At the end of the day, Waldo pays the boy and balks on giving him a free ride. But at last, he takes the small boy and his dog up for a joyous ride. The credits roll. Waldo goes home for dinner with Scooter, the boy that hauled gas all day. Waldo says that barnstorming is going out of style and that he is saving his money for a new plane he is having built. When Scooter asks Waldo if he is the best pilot in the world, he replies no, he is the second best pilot.
Are you the best flyer in the world?
Hush, Scooter.
Wouldn't I like to be? But there's so many amazing pilots around that have done so many incredible feats with their airplanes. Sorry to disappoint you, Scooter, but I'm going to be honest with you. There's just no way that I can say I'm the best pilot in the world. I'm the second best flyer in the world.
Who's better?
In the first place, I'd have to put the German ace Ernst Kessler. He shot down 70 planes and lived to tell the tale.
That don't seem right. Shooting down Americans, that don't make a man a hero to me.
Waldo says that in first place is the German ace Ernst Kessler, Bo Brunden, credited with shooting down 70 planes and living to tell the story. Kessler is fictional. Kessler is based on Ernst Udet, who had 62 confirmed aerial victories. He was recruited into the flying circus by the Red Baron, aka Manfred von Richthofen. Udet survived the war and went on to become a damn Nazi. When prompted about World War I, Waldo says he was in the war at the end. He tells the story of when he and 4 other pilots fought Kessler. Kessler shot down the 4 other planes and began dogfighting with Waldo. The 4th pilot's plane caught fire, and he had jumped to his death because parachutes were not worn at the time. Waldo says Kessler was a fantastic pilot, and when Waldo's guns jammed, Kessler saluted him and flew away. Waldo also says people didn't want to die by burning. In the morning, Waldo flies to another town. On the ground, Axel Olsen, Bo Svensson, has rounded up a crowd to fly in his airplane. Waldo buzzes the crowd and flies a loop before landing in the same field. Axel is upset and wants Waldo to leave. Waldo does something to Axel's plane before spinning the propellers for him. When Axel leaves the ground, both his wheels fall off. Axel's plane is a Curtiss JN-4 known as the Jenny. Axel has to crash land into a pond while Waldo acts like it's a planned stunt. He collects money from the crowd before sending them to the pond. A de Havilland DH-82A Tiger Moth is used for the crash because more of that type of biplane were available. Waldo flies away with the money before Axel can get out of the water. In another town, Waldo goes to see a Rudolph Valentino type movie. In the front of him sits Mary Beth, Susan Sarandon. Waldo begins a conversation about the film. He climbs into the seat next to her. She is amazed that he knows the plot of the movie. Later, Waldo and Mary Beth go to a diner, and he regales her with the Kessler story. Axel comes in on crutches with a broken leg. Mary Beth is a good friend of Axel's. Mary Beth wants Waldo to continue the Kessler story. When Waldo won't, Mary Beth finishes the story. Axel was in the same unit as the 5 planes that faced Kessler.
You fought Ernst Kessler?
He sure did, and was it ever exciting? Just wait to hear. Go ahead, tell him, Mama.
Oh, later, maybe.
Things that German had already shot down 4 other planes before Waldo could stop him.
Landis, Schwab, Curtin, McKinnon.
Right. And how did you know?
Because they were with me in the 14th Scouts, Mary Beth. And when they took off that morning, I didn't see any Waldo Pepper taking off with them.
He calls Waldo out for stealing a story that never happened to him. Mary Beth leaves with her friend Axel. Waldo remarks to himself that he should have faced Kessler. Dillhofer, Phil Burns, has put together a group of flyers into a show called Dillhofer Flying Circus, playing on the World War I German Air Group's name. Ernst Kessler is flying for Dillhofer and using a modified Bucher Bu-133 Hungmeister or Young Master. Ezra Stiles, Edward Herman, finds Waldo in the crowd watching the show. Ezra tells Waldo that the plane he is building for Waldo will be a monoplane. As they watch Kessler fly, Waldo gives all of the reason the single-wing aircraft will not work. They watch Kessler do 9 wing-overs from 3,000 feet. He pulls out feet from the ground. Ezra tells Waldo he can beat Kessler's stunt with a new plane. Waldo asks Dillhofer for a job. Dillhofer says he will have to put together a death-defying stunt if he wants to work for him. Dillhofer recommends wing walking. Waldo is going broke teaching flying lessons. Mary Beth and Axel come to see him. Axel is still on crutches. Axel wants to use Waldo's plane because Dillhofer has made him the same offer. As they spit words back and forth, Waldo says he got to combat late because he was made a flying instructor. Mary Beth says they should work together. The 3 practice an act where Waldo climbs from a speeding car up a rope ladder into the airplane. They have trouble getting the stunt correct. Waldo catches the ladder and is flown through the roof of a barn. Waldo has a broken foot and arm. He goes with Ezra to stay on the farm. His on and off again girlfriend, Maud, Margot Kidder, is mad that Waldo only comes around when he's hurt, but she warms up to him later. Ezra shows Waldo the new plane. Waldo thinks he can fly an outside loop in that plane. No one had ever completed the stunt, which is a loop where the pilot's head is on the outside during the entire loop. When Waldo heals, he and Axel practice a wing walking act. Both men take a turn walking on the lower and upper wings. They begin working for Dillhofer doing the wing walking. The crowds are becoming bored by the stunts as they are becoming too common. Waldo has to dress as a woman to do the stunt as crowds grow smaller. Dillhofer wants Mary Beth to walk on the wings.
What the hell do you want, Doc? Sex! That's what's going to pull us through.
Well, I am all the time saying how I just crave adventure.
Finish, yes?
Honey, don't let him bully you into doing something you don't want to do.
Oh, she's going to do it. She's going to pull us through. All right, now, here's what we do. We put her up on the wing.
Yeah, and she'll fake being afraid.
Right.
And the wind will blow her clothes off.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Wait, why would the wind blow her clothes off? When I'm wing walking, the wind doesn't blow my clothes off.
Nobody wants to come and see you with your clothes off.
Waldo's new plane will be ready in several weeks, and he plans on flying the outside loop. Mary Beth is ready to be a star.
I get to pick the clothes.
What was that, honey?
And I get to pick what word you're going to use about me on the sign. I want my name higher than anybody else's, and I want my name bigger than anybody's. Let's see. I want to be the it girl of the sky, so that's what I'll be.
Her clothes are rigged so that it seems the air is stripping her. Axel takes her up for the show, and she is cool. Mary Beth walks to the end of the lower wing as her clothes flip in the wind. Axel flies over the town and down the main street, while Mary Beth screams for help. Mary Beth is finally overcome with fear and can't come in from the wing. Waldo takes another flyer with him and goes up after the distressed Mary Beth. The two biplanes meet, and Waldo climbs from his plane onto the opposite wing from where Mary Beth is frozen. Waldo crosses over and makes it to Mary Beth. He asks Mary Beth to take his hand. She lets go and flies off the wing. Many people recount this scene as being very shocking during their youthful viewing of this film. Dillhofer and the two pilots have to go to the police. They are met by Newt, Jeffrey Lewis. Newt was Waldo's commander during the war and had 11 victories. Newt is now the regional air inspector for the Department of Commerce. Newt shuts the circus down under the Air Commerce Act. He tells them that flying is big business and stunt flying makes people think it's unsafe. The pilots and planes will have to be licensed, and where stunt flying is practiced will be regulated. Newt grounds Axel and Waldo, and they can't be reinstated for at least 6 weeks. The outside loop stunt was scheduled for the Muncie Fair in 2 weeks. Newt tells Waldo that he was the most incredible natural flyer he had ever seen, but things are changing, and he will have to live with it. Newt tells Waldo he is doing flying stunts because it's kid stuff. At the Muncie Fair, Ezra has a new plane ready. The new aircraft is a modified de Havilland Canada DHC-1 Chipmunk. Newt checks the new plane out, but he says that Waldo can't fly. Ezra will fly the outside loop. Waldo reluctantly allows Ezra to try the stunt. Ezra tries the loop and he can't make it over the top to complete the loop. He does a nose over and pulls up short of the ground. He tries a second time and has the same result. On the third try, Ezra noses over and crashes. Ezra is stuck in the burning plane as Waldo tries to pull him out. The crowd runs out and a careless cigarette starts the spilled fuel on fire. No one will help get Ezra out. Ezra screams for Waldo to not let him burn. Waldo kills his trapped friend with a club. Waldo is enraged at the crowd for not helping. He steals a plane and drives the crowd away by low-flying towards them. The plane conks out and Waldo crashes into the carnival area. Newt comes to see the bandaged Waldo at Ezra and Maud's farm. Newt tells Waldo he is permanently grounded and he will go to jail if he ever flies again. Newt offers Waldo a job but is turned down. Newt then tells Waldo that Kessler was the first to fly the outside loop. Historically, this is not accurate, and I will discuss that more in the summary. Waldo goes to see Dillhofer, who is not happy to see him. Waldo asks for a job, and Dillhofer is indignant. He says that the stunt business is going away. Dillhofer does tell Waldo that Axel is working in Hollywood. Waldo goes to Hollywood and gets a job with Axel as a stuntman and a flyer. Axel's girlfriend says that they are looking for pilots because of a mid-air crash during the filming of a war movie. Axel says no because he is becoming an airline pilot. Waldo is all in for the flying. Waldo convinces Axel to try the job. On the set, Waldo looks at the Fokker DR-1 like Kessler flew during the war. Waldo starts giving the director grief about the inaccuracies of the plane and set. Kessler pops in and says it's poetic license. Waldo introduces himself to Kessler as Mr. Brown. A younger, good-looking actor is playing the part of Kessler in the movie. Kessler is only doing the flying. Finally, Waldo reveals his true identity to Kessler. Kessler knows him and says maybe they can fly together. Waldo and Axel will be flying Sopwith F-1 Camels. Axel tells Waldo that Kessler has requested the director let Waldo fly against Kessler in the dogfight scene. Kessler comes in and asks Axel why he is doing such a dangerous stunt. Axel says he is in debt and is getting married.
Tomorrow we do the McKinnon jump. Who's doing it?
Hiya.
May I ask you why? There are other pilots.
Well, I'm 32 years old and I've been flying since I was 20, and I'm getting married. And they're paying me $500 for this jump, and that makes my total net worth $250.
Kessler says he is $40,000 in debt and only finds happiness in the air. On the day of Axel's stunt, Waldo talks to Kessler about the dogfight, life, and women. Kessler laments about how young the men he killed were. Kessler tells the story that Waldo first told, but this time from the opposite point of view.
Before I could breathe, he was on me again, and I said, "My God, is he better than I am? Is there someone who can beat me in the sky?" We battled. No lasting advantage. He was brighter, I was smarter. He was faster, and I was quicker. Until he hesitated coming out of a turn. His guns had jammed. He came straight for me instead. And I thought, "You are very stupid, but you are very brave. So someone else will have to kill you."
Axel does the stunt for the fourth pilot, whose plane caught fire, resulting in him jumping to his death.
Now, when you pull the smoke pop, keep it going for a full 10 seconds, and then set the plane on fire. Only make sure the plane's really on fire before you get out. Now, then you'll jump, and the camera ship will follow you all the way down, right? Okay, but don't open your parachute too soon, otherwise you'll spoil the whole effect. I don't want to do this shot again, right?
Of course, you cannot pull your chute at all. That way, be sure to get the right effect.
Axel pulls the parachute late and lands hard. Waldo lands, and Axel only has a broken foot. When Axel and Waldo arrive home that night, after a drinking bender, Newt is waiting on the porch. Newt says he will be on the set for the final dogfight scene. In the morning, Axel keeps a lookout for Newt while Waldo gets to the plane. The director gives him instructions for the flight. He provides each man with a parachute to wear. Both men drop the chutes before they get into their planes. Newt arrives on the scene as the planes are taking off. Newt knows it's Waldo when he is told that a new guy named Brown is flying against Kessler. In the air, Waldo hand signals Kessler to fly away from the movie plane. Both planes are unarmed, but they start dogfighting. The aerial shots are superb as the two planes jockey for position. Newt realizes that they are really dogfighting, and he cheers for Waldo.
I don't understand. What are they doing?
They're actually fighting, for Christ's sake.
Come on, Waldo, shake it! Well, as long as he's up there.
The dogfight changes to a low-flying, hedge-hopping battle where the two planes fly the Earth's contours. I'll have a comment about this in the summary. Eventually, Kessler cuts Waldo's tail fin with his propeller. They fly chicken and both planes are damaged. Waldo's wheels are knocked loose. They continue until Kessler's plane is too damaged to continue. Waldo and Kessler salute each other and fly their separate ways. Waldo goes into a cloud bank and feels the true joy of flying. A photograph showing Waldo Pepper says 1895 to 1931. So he died in that year, but did he die due to the dogfight? The film never tells. I'll be right back with conclusions and the world-famous short summary following a word from our sponsors.
Today's show is brought to you by Bluehost. Bluehost is one of the top web hosting companies, and you can get started for as little as $3.95 a month. If you're looking for somewhere to host, you can't do better than Bluehost. You can get started fast by picking a domain name, a template, and a hosting plan. Your site can be live in under 15 minutes. Bluehost Marketplace gives you access to hundreds of free and premium website themes. It is easy to find the right theme, whether you're a blogger or an e-commerce seller. Bluehost is designed to grow as you grow. It is stress-free working with tech support to add or remove functions. Bluehost guarantees reliability, has automated security updates, has backup data protection, and 24/7 support. Every time I have contacted support, I have had a good experience. If you buy anything from Bluehost, we receive a small commission, which doesn't cost you anything extra. All of the proceeds are used to continue to bring you new and better podcasts and videos. Go to the link bluehost.com/track/JEC59 or follow a link at classicmovierev.com. We really appreciate your support.
Summary. While researching this movie, I ran across impdb.org, which is a database like IMDb, but for planes and films. A lot of the plane information I used was obtained from this site. You should check it out. The gun jamming part of Waldo's story actually happened to Ernst Udet, on which Kessler is based, when his guns jammed. French ace Georges Ganymedes let Udet, a novice pilot, live and saluted him. The battle occurred in 1917, which was relatively late for this type of chivalrous act. Early in the war, pilots would wave as they passed on a reconnaissance mission. Later, they took to throwing bricks and shooting with pistols. Eventually, fighters were made with machine guns, while bombers and reconnaissance planes were armed as well. This movie shares some similarities with a couple of other films. The first of these is The Lost Squadron, 1932. Following World War I, 3 pilots and a mechanic make their way to Hollywood to fly for the movies. It eventually turns into a murder mystery as the director tries to kill his wife's lover. The second movie is High Road to China, 1983. Tom Selleck plays a drunken World War I pilot that gives flying lessons for booze money. He has to make a trip to China to find meaning in love. Charles Lindbergh, who would later be the first person to fly a solo flight across the Atlantic, began training to fly at a flight school. He left the school to earn money, working as a wing walker and a parachutist for a traveling circus. Near Andersonville National Historic Site at Jimmy Carter Regional Airport is located Souther Field. A statue that looks oddly like Harry Potter commemorates Charles Lindbergh's first solo flight in 1923. At this location, Lindbergh bought a surplus Curtiss JN-4 Jenny for $500. He took 5 more hours of training before soloing. He became a barnstormer using the name Daredevil Lindy. At 25, he made his famous cross-ocean flight. In this movie, Waldo wants to be the first to complete the outside loop. Ezra was killed attempting the stunt. They later said that Kessler completed the outside loop. In reality, the aerial stunt was completed on May 25, 1927 at Wright Field in Ohio. The pilot was First Lieutenant James H. Jimmy Doolittle, who was in the United States Army Air Corps. The pilot is the same Jimmy Doolittle that planned and executed the Doolittle raid on Tokyo. Following the December 2, 1941 attack on Pearl Harbor, Japanese propaganda said that the enemy would never reach their homeland. On April 18, 1942, Doolittle led 16 land-based bombers off the aircraft carrier USS Hornet. Targets in Japan were bombed, creating a psychological blow to the Japanese and boosting U.S. morale. Doolittle's raid has spurred several movies, some being more accurate than others. They are Destination Tokyo 1943, 30 Seconds Over Tokyo 1944, The Purple Heart 1944, Pearl Harbor 2001, and Midway 2019. There may be others. I can't leave this review without hitting one point. I love seeing the final biplane duel as the planes flew along riverbeds and popped up from behind tree lines. However, this low flying was not common during World War I, as it made the pilots and the planes vulnerable to ground fire. The Red Baron was killed by ground fire, although he always taught his flyers to avoid this. It is currently thought that he made this mistake as a result of an earlier brain injury. The American top World War I ace, Eddie Rickenbacker, said in his book, Fighting the Flying Circus, that they would never fly low like this. What makes good movies does not always make good truth. World famous short summary. I've always heard this as job advice, but the first rule of wing walking is to grab one wing before you let go of the other. I hope you enjoyed today's show. You can find connections to social media and email on the site at classicmovierev.com or in the podcast show notes. Don't forget to follow the links in the show notes or from the site to visit our store. If you enjoyed this show, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. If you've already subscribed, you can tell a friend, colleague, or family member about the show or leave a review at Apple Podcasts. It really helps the show get found. If you want to comment, suggest a movie, or help out, contact me by email at jec@classicmovierev.com. Beware the Moors.